November 13th, 2005, a hotel room in Minneapolis. Eddie Guerrero, one of the greatest wrestlers of all time, is found unresponsive. He's gone. Just 38 years old, the wrestling world breaks in half. Fans can't believe it. Wrestlers fall to their knees. Because Eddie Guerrero wasn't just another superstar, he was the soul of professional wrestling. But to understand why the world still chants Viva la Raza 20 years later, you have to go back to where it all began. He was born into wrestling, not into fame, not into fortune, but into a family that lived and breathed this business. Eddie Guerrero grew up in El Paso, Texas, the youngest son of Gory Guerrero, a wrestling pioneer. While other kids dreamed of superheroes, Eddie's heroes were already at home: his brothers, his father, the Guerrero name. In Mexico, he learned the art of lucha libre. In Japan, he refined his craft, learning precision, timing, and respect. And by the time he reached America, Eddie Guerrero wasn't just another wrestler. He was a man destined to redefine the game. But destiny never comes easy. Every crowd he faced, every promoter who said he was too small, only fueled his fire. He knew he'd have to fight harder, move faster, and shine brighter than anyone else. And that's exactly what he did. 20 years later, the world still remembers that fire. Because legends don't fade, they burn forever. By 1999, Eddie Guerrero had conquered WCW, but the system there was broken. Politics ruled the locker room, not talent. So in January 2000, 4 rebels made a choice that would change wrestling forever. Eddie Guerrero, Chris Benoit, Dean Malenko, and Perry Saturn, the Radicals. They walked into Monday Night Raw, unannounced, unapologetic, and ready to make history. But on that very first night, Eddie dislocated his elbow, a cruel twist of fate. While others might have given up, Eddie didn't. He came back smiling, charming, and more dangerous than ever. Out of pain came Latino Heat, the attitude, the swagger, the spark that no one could teach. He was no longer the quiet technician. He was the heartbeat of the show. The year 2000 gave WWE one of its most unlikely stories: Eddie Guerrero and China Latino Heat and his Mamacita. What started as a comedy angle turned into something special. Fans laughed at first, but then they started to cheer, because Eddie wasn't acting. He was pouring his soul into every look, every smile, every "I love you, Mamacita." He made people believe again. He gave warmth to the spectacle, humor to the chaos, and heart to the business. Latino Heat wasn't a gimmick. It was Eddie Guerrero being himself. Charming, passionate, human. But behind the laughter was darkness. Eddie was fighting a war no one could see: addiction, painkillers, alcohol. The demons that haunted so many wrestlers of his generation. In 2001, he hit rock bottom. He lost his job. He lost his family. And most of all, he lost himself. But Eddie Guerrero refused to let that be his ending. Through faith, through recovery, through humility, he rebuilt. He worked small shows, earning barely enough to get by. But every match was a step toward redemption. When WWE brought him back in 2002, it wasn't a comeback. It was a resurrection. He looked into the camera and said, "I'm not afraid to fall again, as long as I get back up." And he meant it. The Guerrero name was reborn in full color. Eddie and Chavo became Los Guerreros, 2 tricksters who didn't play fair, but played with heart. They lied. They cheated. They stole. And the audience adored them for it. Because Eddie wasn't promoting dishonor. He was celebrating survival. He represented every underdog who had to hustle to make it. Every person who bent the rules just to get a fair shot. Eddie Guerrero made wrestling fun again, and in the process, he made millions of people smile. When that music hit, Viva la Raza! The entire arena came alive. He was electric, unpredictable. Loved, February 15th, 2004. No Way Out, San Francisco, Eddie Guerrero versus Brock Lesnar for the WWE Championship. On paper, it was a mismatch. Lesnar, a machine. Eddie, 5'8", 200 pounds, soaking wet. But that night wasn't about muscle. It was about heart. Eddie took every suplex, every slam, every ounce of punishment, and he kept fighting. When he hit that frog splash, the world stopped. 1, 2, 3. He did it. Eddie Guerrero was the WWE Champion. The crowd exploded. People cried. Latinos, Americans, kids, veterans, all united by one man's triumph. Eddie looked to the heavens and said, "I did it, Papa." And for the first time, it felt like wrestling had a soul again. As champion, Eddie carried the brand on his shoulders. SmackDown became his show, filled with stories, emotion, and laughter. He faced Kurt Angle, JBL, and some of the greatest ever. But what fans remember most wasn't the matches. It was his smile, that mischievous grin before a cheap shot, that twinkle in his eye before a victory stolen. Eddie Guerrero made you feel. Whether you loved him or hated him, you couldn't look away, because he was authentic, and in a business built on illusion that made him priceless. By 2005, Eddie was back on top, but his body was tired. Years of travel, pain, and emotion had taken their toll. He was still stealing the show every week, still mentoring the next generation, especially his nephew Chavo and his best friend Rey Mysterio. But something in his eyes had changed. He was at peace. He'd found faith, family, and forgiveness. On November 13, 2005, Eddie Guerrero was found in his hotel room in Minneapolis. He was gone at just 38 years old. The wrestling world stopped. Locker rooms went silent. Fans cried across the globe because Eddie wasn't just another superstar. He was one of us. Every generation has a hero who transcends the ring. For millions of fans, that hero was Eddie Guerrero. When today's wrestlers step into the ring, they carry more than their own dreams. They carry his laughter, his passion, his relentless spirit that said, "No matter how many times you fall, get back up." You can see Eddie's influence everywhere. In the courage of Rey Mysterio, the pride of Chavo, the fire of Dominic. In every Latino kid who looks at the screen and says, "That could be me." Eddie Guerrero wasn't just part of wrestling history. He rewrote it. He broke barriers of size, race, and style. He proved that charisma could conquer giants and that authenticity could outshine everything else. 2 decades later, we don't mourn Eddie Guerrero. We celebrate him because he taught us that to live with passion is to live forever. He lied, he cheated, he stole, but most of all, he inspired Viva la Raza forever. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because the next chapter of wrestling history drops soon.